The residents of this building are getting trained for a big one. They called in a volunteer rescue worker to explain that most accidents are due to the consequences of an earthquake.
Deprem sonrası ikinci yangınlarda 2011'de Japonya'da olduğu gibi İstanbul'da da aynı şekilde büyük yangınların çıkması beklenmektedir.
First comes the theory, then practical exercises to get the basics down pat.
We felt an earthquake in September that reminded us of the danger. When these events happen, they encourage us to freshen up our reflexes and update our knowledge on what to do.
There aren't many rescue workers, and an earthquake in Istanbul would mean that tens of thousands of buildings would be damaged. Who will there be to intervene? That's why we're getting together and alerting participants to these issues.
Turkey sits on one of the biggest and most active fault lines in the world. Every year, some 10,000 earthquakes are recorded, and every year, some 1,000 people lose their lives. The North Anatolian fault runs in the Sea of Marmara, just off the coast of Istanbul.
This is the fault that will deliver the big earthquake we're expecting in Istanbul. It goes from the Gulf of Kocaeli and goes all the way up to Tekirdağ. It lies 8 kilometers from Bukhara, 3 kilometers from Yasaida, and 10 to 15 kilometers off the coast of Istanbul.
It's been 6 centuries since Istanbul felt a major earthquake, but geologists predict that in the next 20 to 30 years it could see at least 1, 7 or higher on the Richter scale. Some estimates say upwards of 30,000 people could die, with hundreds of thousands wounded and infrastructure severely damaged. Almost 20 years ago, President Erdogan's AK Party drew up a plan to minimize the potential devastation in the economic capital, but the city's new mayor of the opposition says more needs to be done.
I'm not saying they didn't do anything, but it's not enough. In the space of 20 years, in terms of earthquake prevention, for Istanbul and the region, more could have been undertaken.
Among the steps taken, new buildings must adhere to construction norms similar to those in Japan and California. But in this sprawling metropolis, it's not so much the new buildings that need supervision, it's the old ones. Istanbul City Hall admits the task of making them all earthquake-proof is gargantuan.
There are 1.6 million buildings in Istanbul. Not all are structurally sound. Some are in poor condition. We still haven't done a systematic evaluation of all those buildings. We'll do so, and we'll then intervene.
Only a small portion have been evaluated, and of those, 20 to 30,000 are deemed a hazard. Some buildings need restructuring, others are simply torn down, and residents are resettled in new housing developments. To this day, only one municipal project has been completed, but it's still not open. The Professional Chamber of Building Engineers points out another deficiency, gathering places for residents in the event of an earthquake, many of which are small and potentially dangerous.
If there's a school, the government website will show the school's courtyard. If there's a residence, it'll show the garden of that residence. The website says there are 2,850 gathering spaces in Istanbul, but these are the kinds of places that are referenced. They're not real gathering spaces.
Nusret Suna walks us to a nearby designated space where several hundred people could gather in the event of an earthquake. But according to the chamber president, it's inadequate.
There's the sea on one side and buildings on the other. We wouldn't be able to set up tents or temporary shelters. People could gather there and wait standing up, but it's a risky place, even just to stand.
Other gathering spaces were transformed into parking lots or even malls. For years, Istanbul's administrators preferred selling building licenses over preserving open spaces, decisions that could prove deadly when the next major earthquake strikes.